you're president now, and there are plenty of people who are saying that you shouldn't run again because of your age.
The reason I'm not making a judgment about formally running or not running, once I make that judgment, a whole series of regulations kick in. And I treat myself as a candidate from that moment on. I have not made that formal decision, but it's my intention to run again. And we have time to make that decision.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I gotta tell you guys, Joe Biden is embarrassing himself once again, and it is becoming very clear to anybody who's watching politics at all, whether you are Republican, Independent, Democrat, that this is the case, and that was on full display during his tour in Pennsylvania as he is stumping for John Fetterman, the only guy who will have Joe Biden campaign on his behalf, okay? It's kind of funny, but it's also not funny because John Fetterman also happens to be the guy that probably has, comparable mental health issues to Joe Biden, right? However, John Fetterman, his issues come from a stroke, which is extremely unfortunate. But Biden, it's clear that he's just getting old. He's just mentally deteriorating. And I want you guys just to check out some of these clips from his tour in Pennsylvania. In a recent interview he did with MSNBC after his tour, and I'm telling you, I mean, this is just embarrassing. I don't even know what to say anymore. Take a look.
Something like that.
Mr. Fetterman, why did you decide to appear with Biden now? Why did you decide to appear together now? Sir, why don't more candidates want to be seen in public with you like Mr. Fetterman?
Why did you wear a suit? Where did you buy it at?
What are you talking about?
Tim Ryan in Ohio said he doesn't want you there. Warnock said wouldn't say. Do you think they're making a mistake?
No, there are 16 there I've already gone in for yet, and a lot more are asked. Another 20 or so. So I'm going to be going in. I have not made that formal decision, but it's my intention to run again. And we have time to make that decision.
Dr. Biden is for it. Mr. President. Oh.
Dr. Biden thinks that, my wife thinks that we're doing something very important.
Yeah, so it is obvious that Biden fell asleep at the wheel there, or at the very least, the interviewer thought that Biden fell asleep at the wheel. I find it hilarious that was interviewed, that aired on Joy Reid's show, right? that interview could have aired on a better show, right? MSNBC, who stomps for Biden, okay? They're finally showing their Democratic viewers how much of a mess he is. In fact, MSNBC, there was a pollster that was stunned, absolutely stunned, when she did a focus group of Democratic voters in Pennsylvania that all unanimously said that Biden should not run again in 2024 because of his mental health issues. Roll the clip.
Heard some of your focus groups earlier in the show, Elise, from the state of Pennsylvania. Fascinating stuff with all these different groups across Pennsylvania. You also sat down with them and talked about President Biden and how they feel about these first nearly 2 years now of his administration.
Yes, and it's important how the voters view President Biden because he's the figurehead of the Democratic Party. He's the leader of the Democratic Party. And as they talk about the host of issues that are really impacting their lives, crime, inflation, their worries about access to reproductive rights, this is weighing on their opinion of President Biden. So we're going to hear from some Pittsburgh women's swing voters, Pittsburgh area, and then we're going to hear from some Philadelphia African-American Democrats on how they view President Biden. Should Joe Biden run again?
No.
That was quick. Wow. Couldn't finish my sentence. Why shouldn't Joe Biden run again in 2024?
Because too many people will not vote for him.
No. I agree with he's in class, but you don't know if he's really in class.
You could put anybody up next to him and they're going to get it. And that's not good.
A lot of people think he's mentally unwell, and maybe they think it's his age, dementia, whatever. Again, if we had a doctor that would tell us that, it would be a different story. But I think he's getting a bad rap because of his age. But I don't think that he should run again. No, I don't think he could beat anybody.
I think he should run, but it's going to come down to who they think could beat Trump, and he will decide to run. He can't resist that limelight. So it's going to find out to a candidate who can beat him, and so far I don't see anybody other but Joe being able to do it.
I really can't think of nobody else that's put themselves in the forefront that could rumble with Trump. It's going to be.
Is President Biden still the only Democrat that you think could beat Donald Trump in 2024?
It would be hard to say. We would have to see who comes forward. I would be, as much as I would love for Biden to stay into power, I just don't, I would not advise it. Not just because of his age. I mean, that's part of it. But I just think that I am concerned about his health. I'm concerned about his stamina to be able to go the long haul. And that's a taxing job, period. I mean, he came into an enormous amount of issues with the pandemic and, trying to get jobs back on track. And he's done a lot in a short amount of time, but I'm concerned and I see the deterioration just from day one up until now. Yeah. So I'm more concerned about his health.
What specifically do you see as the deterioration?
In terms of his mental stability, he's walking a little bit slower, just a tad, but you can see there are signs there, and I know he does his best to try to hide it or whatever whatever you want to say about it. But he's going through life changes, and that's the reality. And I just wouldn't want that amount of pressure on his life beyond another 4 years.
And those are Democrats who support Joe Biden. I want to go back to the top of your first clip in Pittsburgh with those swing voters, and immediately chorus of no's when you asked if he should run again.
I was jarred by how quick it was. And these are female voters who they voted for Obama, some of them voted for Trump, some of them voted for Clinton, a lot of them voted for Biden, but they just do not see it as viable for President Biden to run for a second term. They simply think he's too old and they're not sure about his ability to do the job.
Yeah, so as you can see there, swing voters are just like, no, Biden should not run again in 2024. And even Democrats who want to support Joe Biden, who's still living in delusional land, right, thinking that Joe Biden's doing a decent job, even they're like, I still think that he has some mental issues going on upstairs. The elevator's not going all the way to the top floor. That's a problem, right? That's a huge problem when we're talking about Joe Biden potentially running in 2024. Now, here's the thing. Before we get to 2024, we got to get to the midterms. And for the midterms, it doesn't look like it's looking good for the Democrats who are all associated with Joe Biden and the terrible job that he's doing running as president. But I guess what I want to talk about in this video is like, what should the Republicans do? What should a Republican answer be, especially if they take back, let's say, the House and the Senate in the midterms? Well, GOP leadership, like Elise Jordan, who's the number 3 Republican in the House, has come out and said that impeachment could be on the table for potential high crimes from Joe Biden, like, for example, Joe Biden's quid pro Joe with Saudi Arabia, in which he basically tried to get them to delay their oil production cuts until after the midterms so that gas prices wouldn't skyrocket before people started voting on election day. Or he could be also impeached over the whole Hunter Biden scandal thing, in which it seems like, he was withholding funds from Ukraine, or he threatened to withhold funds from Ukraine if they did not fire a special prosecutor that was looking into a company, Burisma, that Hunter Biden was on the board of, right? So Elise Jordan has thrown that out there. Kevin McCarthy has kind of walked that back a little bit and said, hey, might want to slow down on that. Not necessarily sure if that's what we're going to do immediately. But quite honestly, guys, here's what I think should happen. I really don't think that the Republicans have to do anything. At first, I said, maybe the Republicans should impeach Joe Biden to get back at the Democrats for impeaching Trump. But honestly, I think that leads to a path of frivolous impeachments where you're going to have the Republicans and the Democrats going back and forth with each other with these, again, frivolous impeachment attempts every single time they get power. I think that's what it's going to lead to. But I will say this, if they decide to do it, I'm not going to argue against it, right? I'm going to say, hey, you know what? It is what it is. However, I'm not going to be mad if they don't do it. At first, I was like, oh, it's a weak move if they don't do it. But the more I thought about it, I said, you know, Biden's doing so bad. And if they take back control of the House and the Senate, they control legislation. Okay, and I think that I would like to see a Republican Party that's more focused on actually putting forth solutions that are going to be good for this country, that is going to help us get out of this crisis, whether it be the border, whether it be inflation, whether it be crime, you know, internationally, Ukraine. I would like to see a Republican Party more focused on that than I would see them focused on trying to get political payback on Joe Biden, right? But again, with that being said, I'm not going to be upset if they decide to give the Democrats a taste of their own medicine with impeachment, or even having a January 6th style commission to investigate the Hunter Biden accusations or the BLM/Antifa protests and riots that happened during 2020. I wouldn't be mad if they did it. And I will say one thing they should do. They should impeach Merrick Garland, right? They should get rid of him. Okay, that is the one thing I will say. I will be pissed if the Republicans do not attempt to get rid of Merrick Garland. If they don't attempt to get rid of Merrick Garland, I'll actually be pissed off, right? That guy got to go, right? He has to go, okay? Right, but I do understand the argument that this country is in such bad shape, and I think the pressure is going to be on them to do something. They can't sit there and do nothing because now the power's in their hands. The only power that Joe Biden has is to sign the legislation. The Republicans control the legislation in Congress. So it's better for them to focus on fixing issues, right? Rather than to play political games with the Democrats. However, I do think the Democrats, if they were smart, they would actually work with the Republicans and enact the 25th Amendment, right? I think it's at that point now where we have to consider the 25th Amendment. But the only way that works is if the Democrat Party and Kamala Harris, the vice president, decide to overthrow Joe, right? That's the only way it works, okay? Other than that, it wouldn't work. But I don't necessarily see the Democrats doing that. If they were smart, they would do that, though. They would just go ahead and wave the white flag on Joe and say, we're done with this guy. Especially if they get blown out in the midterms, because I just don't see it getting better. I don't see it getting better, right? I really don't see Joe Biden improving his approval rating much more. And look, the Democrats also have to run again in 2024, not just for president, but also in these state, local elections, in the House, in the Senate. And none of these Democrats now want to be seen with Joe Biden, right? So will they want to be seen with him in 2024 while he's trying to run? I don't think so. I think you're going to be headed towards another disaster. So if the Democrats get blown out in the midterms, right, if it's really bad, at this point, I would consider the nuclear option and just invoking the 25th Amendment. That's what I would do if I was a Democrat. That'd be a smart thing to do. That way you can get rid of Joe, right? Have Kamala take over, okay? And then you can decide whether or not you want to have a primary, because at this point, you need to have a primary. You have to. The voters don't want Joe Biden again. And since this is the party that cares about democracy so much, you would think that they would do the Democratic thing and actually let voters decide whether or not Joe Biden should be on the general election ticket for the Democrat Party. But again, like I always say in politics, this is what I expect to happen, right? Republicans are going to play defense, which means there's a good chance that they might not do anything, right? They might not do anything, and Democrats will miss layups, right? So that means that Democrats and Republicans probably won't do much of anything, right? That's probably most likely what's going to happen, okay? Probably what's going to happen, but I'm just saying, the smart thing for the Republicans to do, if they take back power, would be to actually focus on passing legislation and trying to fix this country, right? And preparing for 2024. And the smart thing for the Democrats would be to just to wave the white flag on Joe Biden. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.